This is Main Street with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to Main Street. Gary Allen with you. Got a great show for you today, but before we get going, I want to first of all thank the Japanese Gardens of Miami for their continued support of this program. Without them, we couldn't keep this program going and moving forward. I also want to thank, of course, my executive producer, Mr. Rick Del Vecchio, my partner in crime, for all the work that he does on these programs. And, of course, Tommy Sitt, who is my producer on this particular program. We thank you so very, very much, and all of you out there, for tuning in, not only when you watch this program live, but when you are catching it on the YouTube channel. We've got some great shows coming up for you in the future. But today we have an absolutely exciting show to talk about. We have the people from MUFON here. That's the Mutual UFO Network. It'll be on the bottom of your screen if you wish to go to their website and check them out. They're absolutely fantastic. If you've ever watched Ancient Aliens, they also assist there with photographs and information to all the talking heads that are on that particular program. And they also do an awful lot of great stuff. And I've been fascinated, as we all are, with UFOs. Where are they coming from? And you know, I wanted to say this before I bring these two gentlemen on. You know, UFOs have been sighted since the beginning of man, in one way or another. We have found out about it through stories that have been handed down, pictures that have been painted roughly or crudely on cave walls. We've seen them in historical notes and books by everybody from the Chinese folks to Indians, to people from India, to all over the world. There have been sightings of UFOs since, like I said, since man walked on this earth in one way or another. They may not have always understood what they were seeing, but there have always been unidentified flying objects of some sort. The Chinese thought they may have been flying dragons. These people may have seen something in the air. The Indian thinks that they're like cupolas that fly up, that look different with their propulsion systems. And who are we? Oh, by the way, even Leonardo da Vinci may have put one in one of his paintings. I'm a big Leonardo fan, and I'm trying to remember exactly what the painting's name is, but there is one. It's off. It's in the back. It's only about maybe about that big in the painting, but you can see that as a saucer kind of a shape to it. Did Leonardo know something that we didn't? I don't know. Maybe these gentlemen can help answer that question as well. But the bottom line is that UFOs have been sighted all along, all around the world since the beginning of time. And who are we? Are we hubris enough to know that with all the thousands and hundreds of thousands of planets and stars that are being discovered all the time, thanks to all the different probes that are going out there, we're finding out the universe is a lot older than we think. And we're also finding out that there's many, many more galaxies. Even in our own Milky Way galaxy, there are planets that may very well be in the sweet spot, that may have life on it beyond what we are. Well, let's hope so, because if this is all there is, we are in desperate, desperate trouble. Let me introduce to you the executive producer, Mr. David McDonald. This is his second term as being the executive producer. Also, Director of International Investigations, Bob Sparing. They're from MUFA, the Mutual UFO Network, which will appear on the bottom of your screen from time to time. The MUFA began on May 31st, 1969. That was an interesting year for me with my brother in Super Bowl III. And they began that program back in 1969, and they've been there ever since. And they are great. Let me just explain to you, for those of you that don't know, their goals: investigate UFO sightings and collect the data in the MOFO database to use by researchers worldwide, promote research of UFOs that have been discovered, true nature and the phenomenon, with an eye toward scientific breakthroughs and improvements on our planet. Educate the public on the UFO phenomenon and its potential impact on our society. Would you please welcome these two gentlemen, Mr. David McDonald and Mr. Bob Sparing. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, Gary.
How are you?
Great. Thank you for having us. We appreciate
Well,
it.
it's my pleasure. And David, I'm certainly glad to see that you're up and around and you're with us and all that good stuff. And say hello to your staff for me. They did an absolute job helping me put together some of this material that we're going to be talking about today. Where did it all begin for you two, your interest in UFOs? I know, David, you have an extensive aviation background. Bob, I'm not too sure if you do. But I know that the curiosity. I have an aviation background, and my curiosity has always been there. And like I said at the top of the program, let's not think we're hubris enough within ourselves to think we're the only ones around.
Well, I got started when I was a little kid during the blackout of 1965.
Ah,
The next day, my uncle came over saying, "Think UFOs have the power station at Niagara Falls." Then I was totally into old comics. In fifth grade, Diaries of Gods came out. In the 80s, I had a very uneventful sighting of an orange orb, and then I decided to report it to MUFON, and that's basically what got me involved. I had a forensic background on a railroad, not aviation,
hmm.
uh, and most people who become field investigators with us do have some sort of forensic background, and that's pretty much how I got into MUFON back in 2014.
David, how about yourself, sir?
Well, I read my first UFO book when I was about 10, maybe 12, and I've never stopped. I've just been fascinated with it. Um, and back in '07, I was sitting at the computer just looking up UFO stuff, and MUFON pops up. I thought, wow, where's this been all my life? And I think I joined that same night, and that was about 2007, and here I am. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just the most fascinating field that I've ever encountered.
Yeah, because there are so many facets to this, and as I said again at the top of the program, and I think you both heard me, there have been UFO sightings since the beginning of time. Man always looking up and going, "What is that?" And they may not have understood what they were seeing. They may not have quite grasped what they were seeing, but there was something there. Like in China, they thought they were flying dragons. They probably were not. I don't. I mean, I like cartoons as much as anybody, but I don't know about flying dragons. But they were probably spaceships. With the rockets in one area, and they didn't understand that. Then there's always been the flying carpets, and there's always been the saints that were taken up to heaven, spiritually. And then the other part too that has always fascinated me are the architectures throughout the world that have been built to such a precision that our modern machinery today could not make those cuts in the stone or build the buildings like the pyramids, although they say that they did it gradually, but still, some of that had to come from somewhere. Somebody had to come down and impart their knowledge upon us. I mean, that's as far as I'm concerned. I watch Ancient Aliens all the time. Um, and I'm always fascinated by the stuff that I learn and the new things that I do. And I know you folks contribute a lot to their programming. Um, why do you think the government holds back on the information, what they have on UFOs, although they've been releasing a little bit here or there lately? What are the reasons? They don't want to panic the public. They don't want people to know this stuff. Is there a reason you think behind it?
Well, I think there is, and this is just truly Dave talking now. I mean, this is just my opinions. I think the first and foremost, first of all, we don't have to know everything the government knows.
Mm-hmm.
But like something as momentous as this, it's a different story. But I think that the number one reason they don't want the rest of the world to know what they've got and what they're doing with it. And they're probably reverse engineering stuff and coming up with who knows what.
Mm-hmm.
The second possibility is economic. What if the president came out today and said, folks, we've been lying to you for 80 years. Yes, there is bona fide life other than here. And they're here with us. And they're our trading partners. But now we have free fuel for everybody.
Ooh.
So that is panic in the streets. Every economic system in the world is based on oil practically.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that's just one instant. I mean, that's my feeling. I don't know if Bob might have some different ideas, but that's my side of the story.
Bob, what do you think?
Well, yeah, it depends on, what the phenomenon actually is. I think UFOs might be more than one phenomenon, or they might be coming from more than one place. I've always been partial towards time travelers myself, and if we are dealing with time travelers, maybe what they're doing is possibly interfering and manipulating the timeline. And if the government knows this, I don't think they would want the public to know. I always lean towards the possibility that the majority of our visitors may not be friendly. So
Yeah, that has crossed my mind too. But I've always thought when I was married that my mother-in-law came from another planet because she was not extremely friendly at all whatsoever towards me. So and anybody that plays against my Phillies, I'm not exactly happy with either. So I mean, as far as that's concerned, but all these sightings by the military, militaries all over the world of flying objects going and making maneuvers that our aircraft can't make. I know. I spent time in the Air Force, and our aircraft. And Dave, you have a flying school up there in the Ohio area. Uh, I mean, they can't make maneuvers that quickly. I mean, it takes a stealth bomber as it is quite a radius to turn.
Exactly. Exactly. The technology just has to be phenomenal.
Hmm.
And I'm not a high time pilot. I got about 4,000 hours in the cockpit, but I have never seen anything in the air that I couldn't describe. But there's an awful lot of my colleagues that have. And it's an interesting phenomenon. They won't talk.
Yeah.
Because you might get a knock at the door and it's the FAA and they say, you saw what? Well, maybe we better take a look at your medical. And that strikes terror right there because lose your medical, you're out of work. End of the story. So here in the U.S., you'll rarely have a pilot come forward. Now in France, it's a different story. As a matter of fact, their air traffic controllers are trained to take the reports, how to file them, how to, get them down to research. And they are required by law to report anything in the air they see that they don't know what it is. So that's the kind of wide gap you've got between governments here. But here in the U.S., you don't hear a whole lot. It's getting a little bit better now. Ever since they got the whistleblower protection in, the Gillibrand Amendment and all that, which we were involved in. But yeah, pilots are a little tough to get it out of. But oh boy, when they talk amongst themselves, the stories will just make your eyes spin round and round.
Yeah, I once asked my dad before he passed away. He was a captain for Eastern Airlines, and I said to him once, just out of the blue sky, I said, "Did you ever see anything in the sky other than another commercial airplane that didn't look right to you?" And he just kind of looked at me and he said, "Well, I can't tell you exactly what I saw because my memory's not the greatest." But he said, "Yeah, I've seen a few things in the sky that I looked at," and I went, "What in the name of God is that?" And I knew it wasn't clouds, and I knew it wasn't something our military was working on. And and his two brothers were airline pilots as well. And I was in the Air Force, but I didn't see anything like that. I didn't fly fighters. I only flew helicopters. But Bob, what about you? What I mean, the pilots that you've listened to or talked to, or people that have, is there also that fear amongst civilians to be called out like you're a kook, you're a nut job?
not anymore. I think those days are gone. It's pretty much UFOs have become mainstream, and we get thousands of reports a year, and people aren't worried about being humiliated anymore because it's gone so mainstream. As far as pilots go, the pilots that do talk are very, very vocal about it. One of the photographs I've provided today. I'll go into that story of a pilot for a
Okay.
FedEx plane. But there are a lot of near collisions with small cube-shaped objects. There was one off the coast of New Jersey, a plane coming in at 15,000 feet going into Philadelphia 2 years ago, came within 15 feet of a square cube that almost collided with the right wing. And this is becoming more and more common that airline pilots and military pilots are reporting cubes, and sometimes cubes within a clear sphere.
Wow. I know that you did a report, Bob, on AARO. They did some kind of a research, and you did a report on it. And basically, they came up with that there's nothing to see here.
Yes, NASA pretty much is of the same sort of angle on it. They keep stating that the majority of things can be identified. This was the same thing with Project Blue Book, and when the Condon report came out, they basically said there's nothing to see here. It's not a threat to national security. But what they neglected to tell the public is that there were well over 100 reports in their files that they could not explain. I'd say that on average, 80 to 90% of what we get, we can probably figure out that it was mundane. But the stuff that isn't mundane is very, very intriguing. And we see a lot of patterns. We see the same type of craft over and over again, chevrons, triangles, discs. Over periods of time, the shapes change, and then they'll come back, they'll go away again. So there is definitely a pattern to what people are seeing in the skies, and not over weeks, months, or years, but centuries.
Yeah. By the way, just kidding aside, I happen to think that UFOs live in Georgie Tsoukalos's hair. I mean, I just have this feeling that I'd love to get him on this program, but I have a feeling like, as a fellow Greek, I mean, I look at his hair. You talked about Apollo and you talked about the NASA. Gordon Cooper saw some, Buzz Aldrin saw some. When they landed on the moon, they thought, Neil Armstrong thought, we're being watched. Somebody's watching us. They reported this all the way from Mercury to even the space station that's up there. They've all reported seeing things that just didn't seem to make any sense. Cosmonauts have reported seeing things that didn't make any sense. Bright green lights in the sky, numerous of them, 6 or 7 of them, flying around, buzzing around faster than you can blink an eye, and they still deny seeing any of this. And again, Dave, I think it goes back to what you said. They just don't want to panic the society, and that's a shame because these men, they all want to get back to the moon. And it goes back to something else. Is the moon really solid, or is there something inside the moon where these objects live? With all the shapes that they keep saying are on the moon, the face and everything, that which NASA says, oh, that's just a mountain with the stuff going on it. What do you think? I mean, with these astronauts seeing what they're seeing, they're reliable. They're scientists, basically, and astronauts are not dumb people. They're not crazies. Uh, do you think the government takes them at all serious at the sightings that they see?
Well, I think they take them very seriously. They just don't let you know about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've actually heard some of the transcripts from Neil Armstrong, supposedly, radioing back, said, my God, their ships are massive. They're sitting around the edge of the crater. It looks like they have a mining operation going on. I mean, and that's documented, but nobody will ever admit that it was him or whatever.
No.
The evidence is, to coin a phrase from another very famous researcher, the evidence is abundant, embarrassingly abundant. And it just, fortunately now, it's starting to have a few cracks here. We're starting to get some light coming through. Oh my goodness, but it's a long way to go. It really is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I have this terrible fear that, like the Yeti or the Loch Ness Monster or something like that, if it were to be ever, there is one, if a spaceship came down and landed somewhere in the middle of Ohio, somewhere, David, not far from where you probably are, or Bob, where you are, some Yahoo would take a shotgun and probably go out there and try to shoot the damn thing, and they'd fire back, and there would start a global war, a galaxy war of some kind. And that's what the government's afraid of, and governments all over the world, that maybe some Yahoo will get scared out of his bird and take measures into his own hands. I mean, that's the only explanation I have, because if you have people like Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong saying, "Hey, there's something here," well, I gotta believe you. I mean, I really do. I mean, again, I go back to, do you think God just created Earth and that was the end of the story? I don't think so. They may not look like us, which brings up the other part of this. People are saying that in the middle of the night, they're being taken. They're being taken to a spaceship, and they go through all these operations and physical endurance kind of stuff. What do you think? And they call these people the Greys. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that the abduction phenomenon is very, very real. Again, there's a lot of patterns with it. The way the abduction usually starts is the person will see a bright light in their room, followed by small blue and white orbs that circle the bed, and sometimes these orbs turn into these little gray aliens. Then the person is evacuated from their bed. They have sleep paralysis, but they're awake. Sometimes they go through a closed window, through their ceiling, almost like in a metaphysical way, and find themselves on an operating table. And it's a lot of times it's young women who are able to get pregnant, and needles seem to be inserted into their abdomens and such, which is why there's a theory that a lot of these abductions concern a possible hybrid program where they're trying to manufacture half alien, half human babies. Why they're doing it and where they're coming from is, a question that we can't answer. But what's interesting about it is that there are literally hundreds of thousands of cases all over the world of people basically telling the same story. And if that's not enough circumstantial evidence to suggest that the phenomenon is real, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Yeah. David, what do you feel about the abductions?
Well, I agree primarily with what Bob is saying. Again, the evidence is incredible, and the facts often match up. You have the same series, different people who never knew each other saying the same things. I don't know of anybody who has come back with a missing limb or anything like that. But I do know people who had suddenly become pregnant, and then they went to the doctor. Yeah, doggone, you're pregnant, and they couldn't explain it because they hadn't been with anybody in that time frame.
Yeah, yeah.
And then maybe 3 months later, it's gone. I mean, there's quite a number of reports of that. I mean, it's not a rarity. People think about it. How many people have false pregnancies? And what's really going on? It's pretty spooky. I know one lady in particular. She started just spontaneously lactating when she was about 15 years old, and she couldn't quite understand it. But she would go through these spells, and she sent me photographs of like her bed sheets, and there was a kind of a greenish yellow stain. But if you look at it close enough, it's exactly shaped as she was laying on her side nursing a baby. And we've got pictures of that.
Wow.
So I can't just completely say, no, they're nuts or wackos. No, they're not. There's something happening. And there's been quite a number of people who have literally had maladies cured. We got some good stories on that alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm going to use Jimmy Carter's line. I'll never laugh at a person for having an experience because I've had one myself. That's what he said, and I can agree with that.
Yes. Speaking of presidents, wasn't it? Was it Barack Obama or Bill Clinton? Oh no, it was Hillary Clinton. She was going to release a lot of information from the UFO files that they have if she had been elected president of the United States. Or do I have the wrong person, guys?
No,
Uh,
it was Hillary. John Podesta, who was her chief of staff, was very very interested in the UFO phenomenon, and he was the one that convinced her that she should release information. Dave, you were going to say something?
well, I was just going to say going back to the 70s, once a month, MUFON sent a board member to Washington, and they met eyeball to eyeball with President Nixon on a monthly basis, face to face, and briefed him on what's going on. And that went on through President Ford. And then it kind of tapered off by the time Carter got in. But you could go back to almost every president in line, and if you listen sometime, you'll hear all kind of things like Reagan. What if there was another society out there, and that they came and helped us to become welcoming to the rest of the universe? And it was President Clinton who told everyone also he wanted to give disclosure. And they asked him why he didn't. And he said, I can't because that information is held by a part of the government I'm not part of. You can go up through remarks from President Bush. It goes on and on. And I don't know if you've ever heard of a gentleman by the name of Jaime Ashid. He's the president or was the president of the Israeli space program.
Yes, I have.
Intelligence officer and a brilliant scientist. He came out publicly. It's in writing. It's on video. You can Google it. And he said that President went brain dead Trump was this far away from total disclosure, and the aliens themselves waved him off, said, don't do this. Don't drop that bomb. Your people aren't ready for it. Small doses. And that's exactly what you're seeing now. It's starting to trickle, small doses. So that you can look that one up. Kind of make your head spin round and round, but
yeah, it does. We have Dave McDonald, the executive director from MUFON. That's the Mutual UFO Network, along with Bob Sperling, who is the director of international investigations. What is the difference between a UFO and a USO? A buddy of mine wanted to know that, and I don't mean the traveling entertainers for our troops. What's the difference between the two?
Well, anything in the sky that you can't identify as a UFO. All right. So it's not only, possible aliens. It could be weather phenomenon, a helicopter seen at an odd angle late at night. Anything that's not identifiable is a UFO. We commonly think about UFOs, though, as some sort of anomalous craft in the sky. What a USO is something that's seen underwater. And today, the term transmedium vehicle has taken on a life of its own. But transmedium vehicles, basically objects that can come in from space into the atmosphere, into the sea, and back out through three mediums. This has been going on for thousands of years. In the Vietnam War, there was an exceptionally large amount of these transmedium vehicles coming out of the South China Sea that were seen by United States sailors. So the term transmedium is currently the in vogue term, but basically, a USO is something underwater, a UFO or a UAP is something that's usually seen in the air.
What about this? I was watching a program over the weekend or last weekend, I think, about the oceans. We know more about the land on this planet than we do the oceans. There is probably depths of 7, 8, 10, 15 miles deep in the oceans where, if there was USOs down there, and colonies down there, we probably wouldn't be able to find them right now because of the technology. Is that true, Bob?
Yes, but if they are down there, they're running out of room to operate in. When the Malaysian Flight 370 went down in the Indian Ocean, people began to map the ocean bottom in earnest, and I think 70% of the Indian Ocean bottom is now mapped. If there is, we call them a Silurian civilization, that they may have been around for thousands of years coexisting on Earth with us, but hidden. If they are at the bottom of the ocean, they're running out of places to hide. And what you will find in a lot of, not abduction, but contactee type cases where the person isn't experimented on, they're invited onto a spaceship. A lot of times those craft will go down into the ocean, and the people say that they went to an underwater city. So there definitely, I believe, is something going on at the bottom of the oceans.
What about Antarctica? There's always these rumors that in some of the mountains, the old volcanoes that are there, that they see spaceships going in there. In one particular area, there was a program on ancient aliens where this former Navy pilot said that when he flew into this one area, instruments went crazy. Now, I understand about magnetic fields and stuff like that, but he said the instruments went crazy. We landed anyway, but we were told to unload, load, and get out of there. And they went off course a little bit, and suddenly they saw this opening in one of the mountains, the volcanoes there in Antarctica, and they swear that they saw something coming in and out of there.
Well, yeah, I know that there's the purported Admiral Byrd diary when he was down in Antarctica, that he saw something that you could go into where there was a civilization. What's interesting about Antarctica is that 90% of it is off limits to air flights, so nobody really knows what's going on. You have all of the urban myths about the Nazis and stuff going down there, but to be perfectly honest, I still think it's an open book. I don't think anybody really knows what's going on down in Antarctica.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's so many different places upon which UFOs could be all over the place and going on. Okay, let's take a look at some of these photographs that you provided for us, Bob. Tommy, if you could bring those up in order, 1 through 4, please, and give us a couple. Give us a minute or two on each one, and bring those up. What are we looking at here, Bob?
Okay, one of our most famous cases ever, a FedEx pilot was flying auto parts allegedly from Mexico City to Tennessee. They were hugging the Gulf of Mexico coast over Mexico when nearing Monterey, this glowing orb came down and began accompanying the plane. If it had been some sort of weather phenomenon like ball lightning, it most likely would have struck the plane and exploded and would have been gone. This object, however, followed the plane for 33 minutes, and at the US Mexican border made an abrupt left turn and left the plane. The pilot, Eric Delgado, had the presence of mind, shut off his cockpit lights, begin filming for 4 minutes the object outside his window, and then he panned down to his TCAS anti-collision radar. If you look on the right side, the triangle's his plane. While the object was outside his window on the TCAS anti-collision radar, it showed that nothing was there. Why? Well, it turns out that right now the United States government is testing shooting plasma fields in front of our F-35s, because a plasma field will absorb a radar signal. So if we were going in to attack Iran for some reason, their radar system, their missile system, would not be able to see the F-35 because it absorbs the signal. So we believe that this is an actual spherical craft that was enveloped in a plasma field to evade radar detection.
Wow. Can we go to picture number 2, Tommy?
This one was from last year in Minnesota. Very, very interesting photo of a cylinder. It is clearly an anomalous object in the sky. It did not show up on Flight Radar 24. And one of the things we've discovered along the way, and we have a lot of videos, these type of anomalous craft in the sky seem to be attracted to electrical storms. One of the theories is that we believe that the electricity in a thunderstorm may actually rejuvenate or restore the propulsion systems to full speed, and that's why we pick up so many of these during lightning storms.
Huh. All right, photograph 3.
This is a very interesting one. People are much more familiar with triangles than they are with chevrons. Chevrons are V-shaped objects. This one was from a series of photographs taken over Lisbon, Portugal in 2016, I believe. And basically, the most interesting part of this is that this chevron, which was about the size of a 727, was flying backwards. Okay, in each of the frames, it's coming with the 2 points forward. The point of the chevron, which should be where the cockpit is in the back. So if this were a balloon, this would just be tumbling because flying backwards is not aerodynamical. So we also have triangle cases similarly where the triangle's not flying with the point forward, but with the wide end first. Why, we don't understand, but we believe it has something to do with anti-gravity propulsion technology. But this is one of the clearest photos of a chevron we ever had, and it's part of a series of 5 photographs.
Wow. Next one, Tommy.
This one I brought up because I wanted to show you patterns, how a lot of times we see the same type of craft over long extended periods of time. Up in the upper left-hand corner is the famous Rhodes photograph taken by a fellow named Rhodes over Phoenix, Arizona in 1947. You can see the front of the ship is curved, but the back of it almost has like 2 devil's horns in the back, and there's a light center piece, sort of possibly a spotlight. At the bottom right is a photograph taken by a United States fighter pilot in 2018, I believe, over the Atlantic Ocean, which essentially shows the same craft 70 something years later, but now it's got scalloped edges around it. And the other 3 drawings, the one in the lower left is from 2013. It's exactly like the Rhodes photographed above it, as are the 2 other drawings from 2 other MUFON cases where witnesses provided us drawings. Not only do we have a lot of photographs and videos, but we have almost 10,000 drawings by our witnesses in our 137,000 case database. And a lot of times these people are drawing the same craft type over and over and over again. So this is a craft type that's been around for well over 70 years.
Yeah. And the interesting part, as you said earlier, you and Dave both, that these people don't know each other. They've never come in contact with each other. They don't have a clue, and they keep coming up with the same depiction of either the creature that they've seen, and I hate to use that term creature, or the individual, or the spaceship, or what it's doing. And it's just incredible to me. Again, I go back to, do we really think we're the only ones around? The one that really got me was, remember the one Star Trek movie where it was the cigar-shaped one where the aliens were protesting the fact that we were killing the killer whales, and it came back to save the killer whales. And when was it? Not long ago, that a cigar-shaped craft was in the skies here in the world. Was it about a year or so ago?
I'm not familiar with the case that you mean. I mean, we've had cylinders for hundreds of years, so I'm not sure what case you're talking about.
Yeah, but I mean that there are some things that are very similar to what we have seen over the years on movies or television, and then we look at it, the reality is there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just incredible to me. Now, the technology that is coming from it maybe that's another piece why the government keeps it quiet. They're getting technology from these individuals from another planet, and they want to keep it quiet till they get it out there. Because let's be honest with you, the stealth bombers and fighters and everything, where did that technology evolve within our aerospace industry, or did it come along enhanced by knowledge coming from somewhere else? I mean,
your guess is as good as ours on that one. But up at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, at the museum, I don't know if you've ever been there or not, but you pretty much start out with the Wright brothers, and you walk through, and it's airplane, 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 airplane. Then it goes to jet, 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 but they're all kind of the same. You go around the corner, there sits this massive B-1 bomber. And the 117s, the stealth fighters. I mean, they are so different than everything else. You think, who dreamt this up, and who designed this thing?
Yeah, but, I lived in Las Vegas for a number of years as a performer, and I'm standing at the waiting to catch a flight into Phoenix and then connect somewhere else. And who's standing next to me but the Joe Theismann, from the Washington Redskins and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And Joe looks at me and he said, so what's new, blah, blah, blah. My brother played pro football, so they all kind of knew each other. And I said, oh, there goes the Area 51 aircraft. He said, the Area 51 aircraft? How do you know? I said, it's a white 737. It's a 100 series. It has the cigar engines, and it has the red line down the middle of the fuselage. That takes their scientists and engineers to Area 51 to and from every day, couple of times a day, 2-3 times a day. And I said, that's all those airplanes do. They go in and out of Area 51 constantly. And I said, they're the only ones that kind of get in there other than those that have been authorized to go through the gates. And he said, I didn't know that. I said, yeah, you'd be surprised. I said, there is also other areas that are restricted like Area 51. I mean, we all know about Area 51, but what about Area 52? I saw something on Area 52. What do you guys know about that with the sheeps that were slaughtered all those many years ago?
I'm not familiar with that case. I know that there's Area 51, 2, 3, and 4. One's Groom Lake, where they do a lot of really, really top secret landings and takeoffs. But the mutilation phenomenon, if anything, is getting worse. All right, not better. And you can pretty much rule out cultic activity at this point, because a lot of these cases, people have seen craft associated with the mutilations, and they're certainly not helicopters. So, I'm not privy to what goes on at Area 52, but I'm sure it's pretty dark.
Yeah, it's in Dugway. They say it's in Dugway, and that's where sheep, thousands of them, were slaughtered in one night.
Well, Dugway, there's an interesting story about Dugway where a group of guys were sitting on the roof, servicemen, smoking at night, and over the course of a week, they watched these landings and takeoff of something, and on like the 5th night, it crashed and there was an explosion. They were all hurried inside, and they had to take their clothes off, which were burned, and then they were decontaminated.
Wow.
That's about 15 years ago.
Wow. What do you think about the supposed original sightings at the area with the original spaceship back in, what was it, 1946, 47, that crashed, and then the government said, oh, no, it was a balloon. It was a weather balloon. What do you think? How much of a cover-up is there?
I think the cover-up's still going on. I really do. Again, the evidence is there. Something happened there, and it wasn't a balloon. I mean, it just wasn't. As a matter of fact, Philip Corso, he was in charge of handling this crash material and the bodies. There were bodies there, and he brought up an interesting point that there's a good chance that these grays are not living creatures. They are more like an android, because there was no provisions for food, water, no kind of toilet facilities. They had no genitals. They had no rectums, no way to intake any kind of food. So, it kind of think of data,
Yeah.
And I read a report where in about 4 years from now, they'll be able to totally map the brain, the human brain. And we all know we supposedly only use about 10% of it.
Yeah.
Well, if they can map it, they can upload it. And if they can upload it, they can download it. So what if you built this entity, some kind of computer for a brain, you download the personality into it, every hiccup, every laugh you've ever had, and this creature goes out and flies, does the research, does the exploring, whatever it happens to be, impervious, doesn't need air, doesn't need water, doesn't need food. comes back, download the stuff out of him, and there you go.
Yeah.
That's a possibility. That's a good theory. So there's so much that's been known about the crash site and the crash site materials. And as Bob can tell you, MUFON is in possession of certain pieces of material that don't come back as anything from this earth.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
I go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say, MUFO. We definitely have what we believe is legitimate off-world material, and it's been tested at labs in Russia, in Missouri, and now it's being tested at a lab in Australia. What's interesting about the Roswell crash is not only the little dead alien bodies, but the surge, the advancement in our technology right after that, when Kevlar was invented, when solid state circuitry was invented, and in particular there was allegedly the memory metal that could be crushed and then restored to its original shape, which the Battelle Institute allegedly took. And interestingly enough, last year, the Battelle Institute, 70 years later, just announced that they have created a self-healing metal. And you wonder if they're back engineering something from 1947.
Self-healing?
If say an aircraft is strafed with bullets,
Yeah.
the metal will heal up and not leave any holes in the fuselage of the aircraft.
Holy cow. That's real advanced technology.
Hmm.
I mean, that's way beyond anything that any of us could think of. I know Dave was talking about mapping the human brain. They looked into mine once and found out there was literally nothing up there. You know, and it was one of my Air Force instructors. He said, we got to get your brain scan to find out if you got anything working up there. So, but at any rate, we've got Executive Director for MUFON, David McDonald, joining us, along with the Director of International Investigations, Bob Sparing, for MUFON. Their website is right below there, MUFON.com. That's MUFON.com. If you have any other interest in UFOs or anything, please go to their website. It's chock full of information, and it's extremely, extremely helpful. The British had their own Roswell, didn't they, back in 1980?
Yes, they had Rendlesham, which was a very, very interesting case that took place over a series of nights at the forest outside a joint U.S.-British base. And the commander, Colonel Holt, and several others who remained pretty famous to this day, came in close contact with the craft. It almost looked like an iron. That you would iron clothes with. It was sort of triangular. It wasn't that large, but it sort of had a point on the top of it. So think of an iron bottom with sort of a point on the top, and it was surrounded by hieroglyphics. And one of the gentlemen, I forget his name, touched it, and he began writing in a notebook several days later, a series of ones and zeros, endless pages. And when it was crunched in a computer, it turned out that it was all latitudes and longitudes all over the world, but they don't know what these latitudes and longitudes represent. There's also the theory that it was some sort of time traveling craft.
Unbelievable. Your organization is called in to assist on many investigations. What is the average timeline, or not timeline, but when someone is called up and said, look, I think I've seen this, they send you some information, what will get you out into the field to actually investigate what someone says they've seen or sent you a picture of or a drawing? I mean, not everything can you get out into the field and investigate, but what is it that will get you and your experts out there into the field to investigate sightings?
Well, we have what we call our case management system. People can go to MUFON.com. While they're there, they can do everything from join to report a UFO. So what happens when they report a UFO, the computers separate it out as to what state it appeared in. Then it will send it to the state director of that state. The state director will then assign it to a field investigator closest to the person, who had the sighting. And all of this can be done pretty darn quick. And then more field investigators go out, they'll do interviews. If there's any further research that needs to be done, they're fully equipped with everything from Geiger counters and Gauss meters to you name it. And they'll do a very thorough investigation. We can confirm about 90%, 89, 90% we can identify. But oh boy, that 10% that's left over, 8 or 10%, that'll just rock your mind. And then that's all entered into the database. And we have the largest UFO database in the world, 1.2 million pieces of evidence housed in our Project Aquarius. And Bob was very instrumental in that as well. So, I mean, the amount of data that we've amassed is just incredible. We have 700 fully trained, fully equipped field investigators in all 50 states and 46 different countries. So our network is enormous. The amount of information that's being garnered is phenomenal. It really is.
Yeah. Have either of you or any members of your organization testified at any time before Congress or the Senate on these investigations?
Well, I sometimes, depending on the season, I'm in Washington twice a week.
Ooh.
And
I'm sorry.
Senate. I briefed the House and Senate and their intelligence committees on the issues of UFOs. We have 285 of them have asked us to supply, and that's the Congress, have asked us to supply them with quarterly reports. We got about 70 or 80 to the senators have asked the same thing. So we're kind of performing the same duties that we did back in the beginning when one of the guys went and met with the president. Well, I go and meet with the House and the Senate and their staff and fill them in.
It's interesting to think about where you go, your reach, and how far you've come. How cooperative are not so friendly friends like the Russians at cooperating with you on these investigations as far as passing on information to you and getting information from you? Is there a great deal of cooperation going on?
Well, for example, Bob can tell you this very fascinating story about how we came in possession of one of the pieces of crash material. Can I go ahead with that, Bob?
Sure.
And it came from the Russians. It didn't come from the Russian government. It came from a Russian researcher, and he sent these samples to Bob because we have our own laboratories, we have our own photo laboratories, we've got everything. So they sent it, and it went to the mailbox, the post office near Bob. Post office said, "Hey, you got a package here." He goes up to pick it. It's gone. Not there. And the postmaster, she said, "I personally put that box in that, in your mailbox."
Right.
She said, "Well, let's take a look at the videos." And they turn around, and all of the cameras had been turned around to face the wall. That's out of a post office.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the sample went from Russia to Missouri to our lab, and we wanted to use it at the symposium because the two Russian labs and our MUFON lab came back and said it was anomalous. So after it was tested, it was sent to me so I could bring it to our symposium. That's when it disappeared. And you got to ask yourself, who would take something out of a federal mailbox, all right, at risk of years in jail, except maybe the federal government, because it was quite well known that we were transporting this piece of evidence. Luckily for us, the gentleman in Russia had more pieces of it, and we had to do a lot of skullduggery to get the second piece, and we managed to get it to the symposium. And from there, one of our couriers took it to his lab in Australia, where where the second sample is being tested now. So we really lucked out, but
Yeah.
we learned our lesson about using the U.S. mail for sure.
And
Yeah, I mean,
interestingly, the second sample didn't show up. What the hell is it? So investigate. Guess where it was? It was held up in customs.
17 days. 17 days it sat in customs. We didn't think we were going to get the second sample.
Yeah,
oh,
at least
wow.
in time for the symposium.
Oh, wow. Well, gentlemen, the hour is just about gone. So I have one final question for both of you. And I want to thank you, David, and you, Bob, for joining us from MUFON. Go to MUFON.com. That's where you can find out all the information if you wish to join the organization and you wish to be part of this. This is a fascinating field of interest and investigation. Where do you see us, put on your foresight glasses, where do you see UFO investigation? Do you think that in the next 100 years, which we won't be around for, but do you think by then there might be contact at some point in the not too distant future, other than just seeing what we see, that there might be actual physical human to whatever's out there contact?
I'll
Well,
go.
in my particular case, when people would ask me that, I'd say, well, you won't see it in my lifetime, or I won't
No.
see it in my lifetime. But I'm starting to change my mind. So there are some cracks, there are some things showing up. MUFON's making quite a difference. And if you listen, you're starting to hear small doses coming out. A few more pictures. Oh, the government said this. Oh, here this whistleblower's at. They're coming out now. And that was something we never had before, because that was ruled by pure fear. So,
Bob, what do you think?
So I don't think contact is soon. Okay, I think eventually we will find out, but I think right now the important thing is all of the millions and millions of reports, pieces of evidence, photographs, whatever. We're at a stage now where we can use AI, all right, to start crunching this. So even if ET doesn't show up on our doorstep or on the lawn of the White House, I'm pretty confident that within 5 years we may know who they are at the very least.
Do you think they're coming from one particular area? Because I know, Bob, you talked about it earlier, and this will be my final question. Do you think they're coming from one galaxy, or do you think they're coming from within our own Milky Way galaxy? Because if they have the propulsion systems to come and go as they please, and the things that we've seen with them flying here, there, and everywhere, they may have come from other galaxies a long time ago. But do you think they're coming from one particular area in the Milky Way galaxy or one of the other galaxies?
I think they're coming from many, many places. I think that the interdimensional theory is good, that they're right next to us and they're just coming from another dimension. I think time travel's on the table. Certainly, years ago, they thought that the vast distances between galaxies would prohibit anybody from ever visiting us. But we already, Earthlings, know mathematically how to bend space time. So you could conceivably travel from one end of the universe in under a second. So they could be coming from anywhere.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you. Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say it's a vast universe.
Mhm.
You know,
Oh, yeah. And we're finding out every day that the universe is expanding so much, and the galaxies are there. Finding what they say, there's hundreds of thousands and millions of planets out there in star systems, more than we have sand on the Earth. So, I mean, it's to think that we're the only ones would be, again, quite hubris on our part. But David, I want to thank you, and Bob, thank you for MUFON for taking the time to join us this afternoon. We really appreciate you coming on board. Stick around right after the show. I want to talk to both of you real quick. And I want to thank all of you out there for taking the time to join us here this afternoon on Main Street. Gary Allen with you. And until next time, please take care of yourselves and each other.